listening to Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the tough biblical questions, because we will dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for letting us share part of your day. We really do appreciate it. My name is Jerry Mitchell. Sitting next to me in her supervisor's chair is Myra.
Hi, everyone.
Y'all don't realize how honest I'm being when I say these things, because she is the one that keeps me, as on track as possible. Excuse me. We have a whole lot to get to today. There's so much going on in the world, but let me remind all the new folks that are joining us all the time from all over the world. If you go to Give God 90, you can check us out there. I think I did mention the other night that I put my translation of Psalm 50 on the website now. It's on if you go to the menu, look under More, and it's down at the bottom. So it's there. Don't forget the books. Of course, Tradition to Truth, God's Universe, God's Rules. Hopefully another one to be added to that soon as things go on. I am hopefully going to get an email this week, and I'm expecting it to say something interesting. I'm expecting it to say that I used so much Hebrew in it that they're having trouble transcribing it, because they had to actually add some software to their equipment to do this. So I appreciate that as well. But don't worry, for the ones that are going to be reading it, you don't need to read Hebrew to read this book, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So it's in there for reference, and there's a lot of references in there other than Hebrew. You'll see what I mean when you get it. Trust me, it's worth it. If you like what you hear, don't forget, you know the way the podcast thing works, right? You gotta do the likes and the shares and hit the notifications. That helps us get out to more people, because it makes it easier for other people to find us. And I like to say, if you like what you hear, please share it with your friends and your family, and share it with your enemies, because they need to hear it too, especially today. There is so much going on, and a lot of people, especially in the United States, are really concerned about what's happening in the world right now. When I was putting these notes together, and it hasn't changed any, we are expecting World War III to break out any minute, right? Now, there's not all over the world is expecting this, but there are people who are just nervous and upset, and we'll get to why here in a second. But Joe Biden, the President of the United States, and Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, are threatening each other with war over some natural resources from Ukraine. And the weird thing is that it seems that Joe Biden is more concerned over the border in Ukraine than he is with the United States border with Mexico. He doesn't want the Soviet. So you tell when I grew up, it was the Soviet Union. He doesn't want the Russian army to enter Ukraine. But it's perfectly okay if we have, at this point, millions of people entering into the United States illegally. That's also called an invasion, by the way, if he ever listens to this. But why is it that he is more concerned with the Russians entering into Ukraine than he is with people entering his own nation without proper authorization? There's a couple of truths in this world. One very basic biblical truth is, and this is something you can pretty much depend on. When we read something in the Bible, we can trace it back to Genesis, because everything that's in there we can look at and we can point back to a certain point in Genesis and say this is where it started, because in the beginning, right? It's that simple. We just look at the beginning and we say here's where we get our start from. Now, in politics, it works a little differently. In politics, we simply follow the money. If you follow the money, this is good. If you follow the money, you're going to come back to the person who had enough greed and enough lust to take some kind of an action that's going to affect a lot of people. And that's exactly what's happening now. There are a lot of nations around the world who basically abandoned the United States with their argument over Russia right now. And it all comes down to, it all boils down to the other nations realize what's happening. The media in the United States is kind of squashing it, but the other nations, they understand it. When we're thinking about something this drastic, something this important, Americans tend to get tunnel vision. I'm going to be honest. We tend to get tunnel vision. We don't look and see what the other nations are looking at and gathering their information. But the other nations realize that the Biden family has personally made promises to the leaders of Ukraine. They want to include them in NATO. Now, Russia has some dependency on fuel being supplied through the Ukraine, and that could interfere politically if they were a member of NATO. It's not certain. It probably wouldn't, but it's okay. When we follow the money in this particular political minefield, it leads back to the Biden family. Now, they have always been notorious for underhanded scheming and trying to hide their wealth. It's well known to the people living in the state of Delaware that the Bidens are the most corrupt family in the state. Joe Biden has always played the victim card. First, with the tragic death of his wife, and then later, just a few years ago, with Beau's terminal brain tumor. He has always tried to win by being a victim. This is a game he can't win with Vladimir Putin. In fact, Biden is so useless that he has the lowest approval rating of most U.S. presidents. I think he's even lower than Jimmy Carter, who, was pretty drastically terrible as far as a president goes. If you happen to read the newspapers from other nations, other than the United States, you'll soon realize that the other leaders not only dislike Joe Biden, they hate him. They despise him. They know what he's doing. They know what he is. And, well, let's just face it, folks. He is a disaster. Many Americans, though, they have come to the conclusion that this is a hopeless situation. Many of the people around the world have actually lost hope that the United States is capable of being a beacon of freedom and even a champion of human rights. But there's another dynamic here as well. And that is many Americans have come to believe that just because we live in the United States, we're always going to have a reason to be arrogant, hold ourselves above the other nations. And we see that I guess the easiest way to say this is the once great America is falling and it's failing. And realize that the United States cannot currently lead the world in much of anything except failure. We're a really good example of failure right now. And as an American, this is disheartening. It really is. I would like to see our nation leading the fight to free the oppressed people, care for the widows and orphans. I'd really love to see the U.S. being leading the world to make sure that everybody had plenty to eat, everybody was able to sleep in a nice, warm, safe bed. But, and here is the first but, feeding the widows and the orphans is not a problem only isolated to the United States. Hunger is not a local issue. It affects the whole world. There are people, not just in the United States, but everywhere, who are hungry. Being warm, feeling safe and secure, getting a good night's rest. It's not just an isolated problem in the United States. And world leaders rattling sabers preparing for war doesn't solve the problem. The Cold War Joe Biden path. See, Joe was older than I am, and he is stuck in about 1973. That's where he wants to live. That's where he's comfortable. But that path that he's on will only lead to the destruction of the United States and Russia. But, it could be part of the plan. Since World War II, many people have tried to actually force the United States and Russia into biblical prophecy where they don't fit. There's been a lot of people who have tried to force other nations into that prophecy, and they just don't fit. And when something happens, everybody guesses. Is this what this means? Is that what that means? There's a prominent Messianic rabbi who's written several best-selling books, and unfortunately, he's been wrong. Now, there's some things that have happened that he's gotten a couple accounts right, but overall, he's been wrong, and he's been very quiet in the last several months. Kind of amazing, isn't it? Biblical prophecies are centered around Israel. Everything else simply prepares the world for Israel to take center stage when it comes to biblical prophecy. Maybe then it is time for the 20th century's so-called superpowers to be disrupted, to be reduced to what is described in the Bible as simply the other nations. Maybe it's time that, are you ready for this? Here's where it starts getting good. Okay? I've gone through the hopeless, I've gone through the helpless. Here's where we get to be hopeful. Maybe it's time that the true believers started to rise up and take their place in the prophetic timeline. True believers are completely unrestricted by political or geographic boundaries. The people who are learning to live the way the Creator designed them to live, they can reach across a barren waste of whatever's left and lead mankind back into the salvation of Jehovah, just like it reads in Psalm 50. And it may be possible to do that even before the destruction begins. And here is another but, right? There's some things we have to do first. First thing we need to do is to learn to live the way that the Creator designed us to live. To live and go along with that, we need to teach our children. Now, we've talked about this before a little bit, And we're going to get into it a little bit more today because this is important. What we're seeing in the world today is a result of not properly instructing children. I don't know anybody that would want to fly on an airplane with a pilot that, well, I think I can do this. Now, hopefully, when you get on an airplane, you want to be able to say, pilot, I know you're trained for this, right? And the pilot should say, yes, I have spent many hours in training to learn how to do this. Why would you want to raise a child and not give them the instructions they need to get along in the world? If you take a cruise on a ship and you're out in the middle of the ocean, do you want the captain of that ship to be trained to keep you safe from storms? To make sure that you reach your destination? I would hope so. So, if we want these people to be trained, why don't we look to the people that are going to be doing that job at some point in the future, or those jobs at some point in the future? Would you want a surgeon operating on you who isn't trained to make sure that you survive that surgery? I mean, you can, and I've used this example for years, you can do brain surgery with a sledgehammer and an axe. You're probably not going to like the result, right? Would you want someone untrained doing surgery on you? But we allow our children to do certain things, don't we? There are people proposing that we allow our children to choose what sex they want to be before they can read. There are people that are proposing that we should allow our children to act like animals, dress like animals. They call them, what, Furbies or something like that, right? These people that are proposing these things were allowed to do those things because they were never taught. They were never instructed. They were allowed to do the things that they felt good about, not necessarily the things that were best for them or that kept them safe, but they were allowed to do these things. And they're saying, oh, just let the children go. It's okay. We can see the results of untrained children that think they can lead nations. Just read your newspapers. Look at your television sets. Listen to your radios. Listen to some of the podcasts out there. Let's look at some of the world leaders we have. Let's start the United States with our own Biden administration. If you look at who is in his cabinet, who he has chosen to associate himself with, it's a list of spoiled children, entitled children. And they have rejected the Creator. Because of that, they look like and they act like freaks. Many of them do. They don't have a clue about how the world actually really works. I'm going to pick on North Korea for a minute. You'll see why. Maybe not like you think, but think about this. Kim Jong-un is the son of a dictator. Had everything he wanted when he was growing up in North Korea. Well, I shouldn't say everything he wanted. He had everything he had access to in North Korea when he was growing up. Now, he probably received some training on what he should do and how he should do things. But his actions display nothing more than a spoiled child in charge of a nation. The entire Iranian government, all of those folks, and these folks didn't have access to, what I'm going to get to here in a minute. Because when we talk about biblical things, most people go to Proverbs 22 train a child, and they think it's specific to biblical things. But what I'm saying is overall, all the way around, even the Iranian government, they are led by hate for the rest of the world. They turn on their own brothers, and they use the excuse that they're doing their religion when it's really nothing more than jealousy. China. We see China today. It's one of the wealthiest nations in the world, but it's only become that way from the help of the rest of the world. People going to China to put those folks to work. People, corporate companies from all around the world going there because they were able to say, well, if you come here, we'll do it cheaply. And they did. But now that all these other nations have all the product they can get, they can use, all of a sudden China finds itself in this mass of stuff. They've got all these people, they've got all these factories, but they don't need to produce as much. And they're really, the leaders still think that they're entitled to receive everything that the world's been giving them, but the world can't give them anymore. And China's beginning to throw a tantrum, just like an untrained child. All of this because we failed to teach our children what they really need to learn, and that is how to live in the real world. All around the world, children are taught mathematics. They're taught some type of science. It's not always good science, but they're taught some type of science. They're taught grammar in their own languages, although if you read their newspapers, it doesn't always read like that. We've got a real communication problem, and I may address that soon. Not today, though. But we've not taught these children, and there's many, many children my age and older who were never taught what they really, really need to be taught. We have not taught them to love. We've taught them how to be combative, but we haven't taught them how to fight. We haven't taught them how to argue logically. They argue with their feelings, not facts. We've not taught them to respect themselves or to love themselves, so they have no clue what it is to love and respect someone else, not in the real sense. Our children today, I'm going to say it this way, the majority of our children today, and if you go back just a few generations, you can see where it began to grow. They became self-centered, self-serving, and the saddest part, they relied on themselves instead of on their Creator. Here's where the hope comes in. There is hope that crosses every political boundary, every geographic boundary, and every other boundary that we can find. Listen to Psalm 31, verses 13 to 24.
Lord, I trust you. I have said, you are my God. My life is in your hands. Save me from my enemy's grasp. Save me from those who are chasing me. Show your kindness to me, your servant. Save me because of your love. Lord, I called you, so do not let me be disgraced. Let the wicked be disgraced. Let them lie silent in the grave. With pride and hatred they speak against the righteous, so shut their lying lips. How great is your goodness! You have stored it up for those who fear you. You do good things for those who trust you. You do this for all to see. You protect them by your presence from what people plan against them. You keep them safe in your shelter from evil words. Praise the Lord. His love to me is wonderful. When my city was attacked, in my distress I said, God cannot see me. But you heard my prayer when I cried out to you for help. Love the Lord, all you who belong to him. The Lord protects those who truly believe, but he punishes the proud as much as they have sinned. All you who put your hope in the Lord, be strong and brave.
Now, our Creator has the ability to reach across every boundary, every political boundary, every geographical boundary. He will even reach across sin if you are willing to repent and live his way. You know, when David writes, in my distress, I said, God can't see, but he heard my prayer when I cried out for help. We've read his promise, and we read it repeatedly in the Bible. We call out to him, and he comes to us. Myra's going to read just a few examples of that.
Psalms 3:4. To the Lord I cry aloud, and he answers me from his holy mountain. Psalms 9:10. Those who know your name trust in you, for you, O Lord, have not forsaken those who seek you. Psalms 34:4. I sought the Lord, and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. Isaiah 30:19. O people in Zion who dwell in Jerusalem, you will weep no more. He will surely be gracious when you cry for help. When he hears, he will answer you. Jeremiah 29:13. You will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart.
Are you starting to see a pattern? Looks like a theme here, doesn't it? I cry aloud and he answers. You will, and really, you will seek me, you will find me when you search, not in the caves, but in your heart. This isn't some New Testament concept. The idea that our Creator will save us even from ourselves, okay? That's been accepted for a very, very, very long time. It actually is our Creator who directed Noah to build the ark. It's our Creator that sent Moses back to Egypt to get his people. It's our Creator who sent the prophets to warn us when we're going the wrong way. It's our Creator who chose to redeem us. It is our Creator who is, he's willing, and he sends people to us even before we ask. There are people in your life today who are there because they will be there when needed. Even in the time like we have today, where it seems like the whole world's spinning out of control and it's some kind of a frantic, chaotic mess running empty from the Holy Spirit. You see, when we choose to call on our Creator, he hears us, and that gives us hope. He answers us, and that gives us help. And when he guides us, maybe I should say it this way, when we allow him to guide us, that gives us power. We'll have the power to influence others, to do good, not evil. We'll have the power to be the example that other people around us will see. We have the power to be the Creator's representative in a place that seems to have rejected him. You will have the power to defeat evil. You will have the power to be righteous in an unrighteous world. When you have that kind of power, you probably should have some training to use it properly. And that is where Give God 90 can help. If you go to givegod90.com, learn to live the way you are designed to live. Learn to follow his instructions, because it is in those instructions where you will find the training that you need to use his power to glorify him. By making those little changes in your lifestyle, you can access the power of the Creator. And I know it sounds like I'm saying you can be some kind of a superhero, right? Well, you're not going to, fly like Superman. You're not going to climb walls like Batman. You're not going to, spin webs like Spider-Man, okay? But you may be somebody's hero, because for someone, you may be the example they need to see. You might be the only one who actually intervenes for someone in prayer. You might be there when somebody needs a representative from the Creator. That is power. And it's also what being a trusting believer does. Speaking of worship, I just mentioned worship there. Did you realize when Adam went to the garden, it's to tend and worship. That's why he was put in the garden, right? The word translated tend can also be tend. I said that wrong. The word translated tend can also be translated as worship. And of course, to keep it is to guard. So Adam was put in the garden to worship there and to guard it. You're put somewhere to worship and to guard it, right where you are. I mentioned a while ago that I was going to look at Proverbs 22, and King James says, train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. There's a radical word in that verse. And if you're keeping score, Strong's number 2596. Get ready for this one, folks, because I'm guilty of this one. The word translated as train can also be, let me say it this way. It comes from the Hebrew word chanach, as in Chanukah, dedication. It's not just that we teach our children. We need to dedicate ourselves as children of our Creator. We need to dedicate our children, even our adult children, to His service and for His will and His plan. And we've talked to a lot of parents who, and I think we had this conversation with somebody just the other day talking about their adult children. I really wish I would have taught them better. I really wish I would have done this. I really wish I could convince them. It's not too late. You can dedicate them. They don't even need to be there. But if you dedicate your life first, and by the way, if you go back and listen to the Hanukkah message I gave in, I think it was December, just a couple of months ago, I keep talking about how you can rededicate yourself. It's not too late for you either. You can dedicate yourself, dedicate your children, because through that dedication, we will acquire the ability not to force our traditions on our children and on ourselves, but we will have the understanding to be able to turn some of those traditions loose, the ones that interfere with our relationship. We can get rid of all of that. We can pass along that understanding about how the world really works. we can offer them something even better than just instruction, like you would instruct someone in math. Because when we dedicate ourselves and our children to the service and the worship of our Creator, we will have the power to influence the world. There's no need to fear what's happening around us, because even when everything seems to be falling apart, we're going to have the power to hold our little corner of the world together. And when all of the believers begin to do that, that's when the faith and the trust of others will grow. So, did you have anything you wanted to add to all of that?
Thank you for joining us today, and think about this dedication, and we will see you on Thursday.
Absolutely. Thursday, if plans work as well as I think they will, I'm going to fill you in on who was the most evil human being in biblical history. Till then, many, many blessings, everyone.